Thank you. Thank you for that music and the reading and your introduction. This month we've been talking about exploring ideas of consistently and regularly working to stay on this pathway of God's plenty. You know, walking the path with God, all good. We're talking about a journey of the joy of spirit, spirit experiencing life in, through, and as its creation. We're talking about the idea of conscious creation. Our minds are creative. So that's kind of what we're talking about. We've used a couple different books, May McCarthy's book called The Path to Wealth and Wallace Wattles' book, The Science of Getting Rich. We've talked about cultivating a deeper relationship with our chief spiritual officer, our CSO, as May McCarthy calls it, and really learning to do what is for me to do, and then turning it over to the chief spiritual officer. We're encouraged to have daily meetings with this chief spiritual officer. What a way to start the day. Just saying, you know, here I am, what's going to go on, I'm willing to do what is for me to do, and request strength and guidance and all that good stuff. So Wallace Wattles said, by thought, the thing you want is brought to you. By action, you receive it. And that sounds almost magical. As a kid, remember the TV shows, and maybe you saw this in person too, the magician had a black hat, and in that hat was something, and he had a wand, and he would take that wand and move it over the hat and say, abracadabra, and out would come, whether it's a rabbit or doves or whatever it was. You know, abracadabra in Aramaic, the language that Jesus spoke, means I create as I speak. Go figure, huh? I create as I speak. Now, Jesus maybe didn't say abracadabra, but he did say, it is done unto you as you believe, and he did say, if you have faith as of a mustard seed, just tiny, tiny, little tiny seeds, you can say to this mountain, move from here to there, and it'll move. So he had a lot of confidence in speaking one's word. He was saying you create as you speak. And we've had testimonials. We had a testimonial from Marv a few weeks ago, and he was talking about having that meeting with his higher power having to do with his choice of his first wife, who, you know, he followed that still small voice within him, married her, had a wonderful marriage with her until she died, and then he had the same experience. He was not so sure about the second one. He had to give it a second try and say, is this really what I'm supposed to do? And his intuition, his leading said for sure, and indeed it was. And we heard from Carol Robinson, and she was talking about, she was looking around her house and she thought, I really need a bookcase here in this section, and she just didn't seem to be acting on it, but she sat down, she did some prayer work around it, she did some visioning, saw this beautiful white bookcase just in this particular area in her house, and let that prayer go. And the next day, she gets a call. And the voice on the phone says, you don't know me, but I understand you're looking for a bookcase. And here's this woman. She said, I'm moving. I got the bookcase all loaded up in a trailer. I've got guys to help. If you want, take a look at it. I'll bring it over. If it fits, we'll move it in your house. Boom. A couple hours later, she's got this perfect bookcase that she visualized and spoke her word for. This is how this philosophy of science of mind works. We can speak our word, we can abracadabra, and indeed it is done unto us as we believe. And then we heard from Leif Nestingen, who had struggled with hepatitis C for years. And he said, I always believed that I would be healed. And he said, I didn't know how, but I believed I would. Well, lo and behold, he's chosen to be part of a clinical study, and lo and behold, he gets the real pill, not the sugar pill like they do in studies. And guess what? He no longer has Hep C. He was cured. He put his vision on that idea of I am cured of Hep C. He didn't know how. He didn't tell the universe, this is how you're going to do it. I'm going to be in a clinic. Didn't do that. He just visualized being well. So they exemplified how we can indeed move mountains in each of our lives, however that looks. And then I read this example about this woman. She'd been out of work for 18 months, no paycheck. And she was praying, and then she realized one day that she was looking for jobs that didn't suit her. She was hanging with what was familiar but wasn't good for her. And it kind of came to her, this is not what I'm supposed to be doing. So she in this prayer work, she realized that she was reminded that she lived in the sea of possibilities and that anything was possible for her. And here's what she said in her own words. She said, I will forever remember that powerfully transformative moment. As I said yes, as I was truly willing, I literally felt the world, the cosmos, and my understanding shift. Something within me gave way, and I had a direct experience of wholeness, abundance, and a prosperity in a way I never knew was possible. Now, this is before she did anything. She was sitting in prayer, and all of a sudden she came to this realization that she was approaching this in a way that she was looking back, trying to do what was familiar, not looking at possibilities. She said, my fear evaporated as I stood rock solid in my faith. I had a surety of just how supported and empowered I was. Not surprisingly, with this powerful shift in my consciousness, everything around me also shifted. And within 2 weeks, I had a dream job. Now, I find that peace, everything around me also shifted. This is the truth. When we change our consciousness, the consciousness of the whole situation changes, and it is a beautiful thing to see. We are changed, our world changes with us. She had a direct experience of her divine nature, which then demonstrated in her life. And she said, you can do this too. I just love when we're reminded of that. As we forgive, as we become more loving, the consciousness of things around us changes. We don't have to go and change the screws in somebody's head or make nice with, we don't have to do anything. Raise our consciousness, be forgiving, be open, be positive. So today we're going to explore an important ingredient to give us the freedom to do those things I mentioned, to walk that path with God, to feel that spirit in, through, and as us, and to practice the conscious creation. And today we explore an important ingredient that gives us this freedom when we apply it. And it does this by, interestingly enough, as I interrupt myself, this week at Malino Lakes, we had the same lesson, basically. And so I was very happy to bring this to Lino because we've got a young man in there who writes and performs rap, R-A-P. I don't know if you sing rap, you perform rap, what you do, but he's done it for us on several occasions. And I thought he would like this because it involves some alliteration, okay? So today we explore an important ingredient that gives us freedom when we apply it, and it does this by paving the way, paving the pathway of plenty. When I was first using one of these things the guy that I was working said, she says, do you know that you pop your peas? You got to be careful not to pop your peas. Paving the pathway of plenty, generating the journey of joy, clearing the course of conscious creation. And if you're not doing this, it junks up the journey. It clogs the course. It pollutes the pathway. So what we're talking about here is forgiveness. That's what we talked about at Lino Lakes on Tuesday, and that's what we're talking about today. How forgiveness can make us able to walk that path with God so much easier, so much more pleasant, so much more doable. May McCarthy in Pathways to Health suggests that we incorporate an idea of every night before we go to bed to get a clean slate. You know, take these grudges that you have, these ideas of unforgiveness. You know, you've heard about this in marriages. People say, well, we've decided we're never going to go to bed angry. Well, good idea. That's a good idea. Kiss and make up before you go to bed. Get a good night's sleep. And take it a step further. Why be mad at anybody when you go to sleep? You know, why do you think people have so much trouble sleeping? If you're going to bed with resentments and judgments and blame, take a moment and say, God, I'm not sure I'm capable of doing this, but I know that there's a power within me that is capable of doing it, and I just wipe the slate clean right now. I'm not judging anybody. I'm not blaming anybody. I'm just wiping it clean and having a good night's sleep. So she is suggesting that we do that. And in A Course of Miracles, this is modified just a little bit, but it goes like this. Do you want peace? Do you want happiness and a quiet mind? A certainty of purpose, a sense of worth and beauty that transcends the world? Do you want a quietness that cannot be disturbed? A gentleness that can never be hurt? A deep, abiding comfort, a flow of abundant good, and a rest so perfect it can never be upset? Do you want freedom? All this freedom, all this forgiveness offers you. Forgiveness, I think it's just underrated. You know, I really think when we're harboring blame and resentment and unforgiveness, we're keeping our good away from us to a large degree. So the key ingredient is forgiveness, and it's a good idea to have this thought before you go to bed at night, to forgive. McCarthy goes on to say, forgiveness doesn't mean you absolve the person of their actions or even place yourself in a position to be hurt by them again. Absolve a person from their actions? I mean, has anybody ever come up to you and said, oh, I'm going to forgive you now? I mean, my back would go up just like this. Forgive me? Who are you to forgive me? What kind of self-righteous person are you? You know, when we forgive people, we do it in our hearts. We're not announcing to them, I am this high and mighty person, and I have judged you as doing something wrong, and now I will forgive you. Aren't I great? That is not what we're doing when we forgive. We're going within and saying, I'm carrying a burden on my shoulders, and I'm getting rid of it. We forgive for ourselves, not for the other person. Forgiveness means that you recognize you can, this is May again, forgiveness means that you can recognize that you can choose not to let someone or some situation have power over you anymore. I've experienced this. It's fabulous to get rid of that. You can all do this if you've got anything that you've carried with you toward your parents or somebody in high school or wherever. Just make a decision to get rid of it. It frees up energy. Forgiveness is for your benefit, nobody else's. When you forgive, you do it for you. So, She goes on to say, if your thoughts are consumed with resentment, it becomes harder for the messages of your chief spiritual officer. I write that all over because it doesn't come right off my tongue. Chief spiritual officer. It's easier to listen to those messages when you've forgiven. By letting go of these resentments, you free up energy to receive more of the good you deserve. Who wouldn't want more energy? And this is the truth. When we let go of that stuff, energy comes to us. So last week, the lesson was about connecting our thoughts with our personal actions. And ridding your thoughts of unforgiveness, resentment, judgment, frees up the energy to do what is for you to do. And so, interestingly enough, this week, a friend shared this with me, and I thought it exemplifies acting in a certain way, which is what we talked about last week, around this idea of the importance of forgiveness. He and his wife had been together with their sister-in-law. Well, it turns out they have a little different opinion politically than the sister-in-law. And she ends up getting all bent out of shape, calling him names, and she stomps out in anger. You know, she judged them. You don't believe the way I believe. You're bad. You're this and that and this and that. Walks out. And they deliberately chose not to badmouth her, stir this thing up. Can you imagine how tempting that was on the ride home? Can you believe that woman? This is about the last straw. You know, they decided, no, you know, that's her. We got our stuff to deal with. Let's take the high road. And when I thought of this, I thought of that reading that Dennis did. This was them taking that stick and moving higher. And here's what happened. They decided to, you know, bless her instead of blame her or gossip about her. And he also decided then to do something, to act, to do a certain kind of action. And that was, his new hobby was to do some of this ancestry search stuff. And so he goes, takes her name, and does an ancestry search on her ancestors. And I don't know if any of you have done this, but I know people who do it, and it takes a lot of time and effort. And so he did a lot of work on this, and he made a little booklet for her with all this information about her ancestors. And he sent it in the mail to her, didn't send a message saying, oh, by the way, I do forgive you. No. Sent this beautiful booklet about her ancestors. And she loved it. She just loved it. She couldn't hardly believe that he had gone to all that work, and, you know, it gave her information she never had before. It opened her mind to, you know, her background, and it was great. So you can imagine what that did for their relationship without them saying, oh, by the way, we've decided to forgive you for being such a jerk. That doesn't work. This forgiveness is inside, and when we get our thoughts right about that, deciding to let it go, be forgiving, then we can let our actions do something, then certain actions. And in this case, was just perfect. He just reached out and did something kind for her. And I share these testimonials to remind you how practical our philosophy of science of mind is. These things are practical, and when we put them to work in our lives, that's when we can walk the path with God. That's when we can open ourselves to that power within. That's when we can change things by changing our thinking. There's a power for good in the universe, and you can consciously use it. And I've got two other stories. One of them is a little story, so it doesn't count. But it's also, they're both from Roger Teal's book that Dennis read from. First one is about Abraham Lincoln. He was told by this woman, she heard that he said some kind things about his enemies, okay? And she said to him, "You should be destroying your enemies." And he said, "Madam, do I not destroy my enemies when I make them my friends?" The guy had something going there. So he didn't believe in simmering. I mean, he was an unbelievable guy, the challenges he had and how he just kept his humble nature and did the right thing, the thing that he thought was the right thing all along. He didn't believe in harboring hate, and of course he believed in making friends of his enemies. And he was the kind of guy, too, that when he is, if I got this right, I think when he formed his cabinet, he took people that were not in step with him politically. Takes a lot of guts to do that. Okay, my last story, I think, was also from this book. It's about a guy named Ari Arayarotin. And he was a guy in Sri Lanka in 1958. He formed a movement called Sarvodaya, and that means welfare for all or an awakening of all. And his idea was to bring power back to the villages and to help them lift themselves up by their bootstrings. And it was an indigenous organization, and they also then, after the tsunami of 2004, they've been working diligently to make repairs in that instance. But when he started this movement, he learned that there was going to be an assassination attempt on his life the next night. He was going to speak at a Buddhist gathering place, Buddhist center. So what does he do? In the dead of night, he goes to the house of the guy that he has heard is going to be his assassin. It's a guy by the name of Chopi. Dead of night, goes over to his house, knocks on the door. Chopi answers. And Ari Arayaratne says, "Hi, I'm Ari Arayaratne. I'm the guy that you're supposed to assassinate tomorrow night in the Buddhist temple." And he said, "I am here to ask you not to do that, not to kill me in that temple, because why should it be desecrated by the blood of a beggar like me?" He said, "Kill me here instantly." Can you imagine the audacity of this guy to do that? And I would guess he was willing to die right then and there. So this Chopi looked at him, gazed into the eyes of this science teacher turned reformer turned mystic, and he said, "I can't kill you." And what happened then is at that very moment, Chopi changed, and he became a great admirer and supporter of Arayaratne. Don't you love that story? Stuff happens, you know, when we decide to go to our higher power and say, you know, I want to do the right thing, I want to step out, do the right thing. Consciousness is raised, and obviously in this case, the consciousness of Chopi was raised as well. So the title of my message today was Freedom to Walk the Path. And of course, we're talking about forgiveness being a key ingredient to walking that path. And we just know that when we do that, the consciousness of the whole situation gets raised up. So I'm going to ask you to take a deep breath, if you like, and I'm going to do a spiritual mind treatment around these words. I know there is but one power in the universe. That power has the perfect solution to any perceived dilemma in life. That power is peace and joy and love, is balance and order, is abundance, it's everything good. I know I am one with it. It experiences life in, through, and as its creation. So with this knowledge, this power within, I speak these words blessing this service today. And I'm reminded of the blessing of forgiving. The forgiveness I give myself, and the forgiveness I extend to anything or any person in my life. Any person or situation I might have judged harshly. Any situation for whom I have been holding a grudge. I'm willing to let go of those judgments that do not serve me. Rather than judge, I bless. I open myself to my highest and best. I am free. So in gratitude that as I speak, I create, abracadabra, in gratitude that this is how the law works, I release these words and say, and so it is.